Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Justin here. So yes, I'm going to be reviewing another anime these next couple of weeks or so. I'm still watching the next J drama that I want to review, which will be a surprise when it comes out. But for today's anime review, I'll be reviewing My Hero Academia, not season by season, but as in its entirety, since the series is now officially ended, and the special should be coming out in the next few weeks. So yes, just last fall, the anime finally ended, and a year prior to that, the original manga also ended. So I think it's now a good time to really talk about this series. So, in case some of you didn't know, My Hero Academia takes place in a world where, the majority of the population, they all have, mutant powers or superpowers, whatever you want to say it, and they're called Kosei in Japanese, which is translated as quirks into English. So, for example, just imagine any superpower you can think of, and some people can have them. Like, for example, super strength, or you can harden your body to steel or rock, or you can just make fire ice come out of your hands. So pretty much this is the world where at least over 85% of its population live in. And currently, of course, people use these powers for good, and some use them for evil. And just like in Tiger and Bunny, the superhero business is now corporatized to a certain degree. And superheroes, they have their own agencies, and you can just go to them, to take care of your communities or to take over, terrorist attacks, whatever you can think of. And of course, since this is now a very capitalized reality TV kind of thing, the superheroes are all respectfully ranked, and the top hero is All Might. Even though he has this all-American look to him, and all of his attacks have state names like Alabama Smash, Detroit Smash, he's really a Japanese guy, which I think is pretty interesting. But yes, so pretty much he's the top hero in the world, and every kid, they just want to be like All Might. And this is especially true with Midoriya Izuku. But the thing in his case is he's quirkless. And because of that, he's consequently bullied by his former best friend, Katsuya Bakugo, who can pretty much make anything explode. And despite not having these powers, he's still motivated to do the right thing. And wow, his friend, his old friend Katsuki. Did I say Katsuya before? If I did, I'm sorry. His name is Katsuki, or also called Bakugo in the Japanese versions, whatever you want to use. So he's trapped by this slimy villain, and despite having no powers, he does his best to try and save him. But then all of a sudden, All Might, he comes and saves the day and saves him. And touched by Midoriya's courage, he decides to, let's say, pass on his power on to Midoriya, because as it turns out, All Might, he's at the end of his prime and can no longer maintain the use of his quirk called One for All. And so how does he pass this on? Well, he just tells him, he pulls out his hair, gives it to Izuku, and says, swallow this and you'll become just like me. And so, of course, after some training, he has to learn how to use his power. And every time he tries to use it, it kind of does damage his body. So he tries to, let's say, use a punch with the power. It ends up, shattering his arm and all this other stuff. So, yeah, that's kind of where it starts from there. And then eventually, he's introduced to all these problems he has to solve. And he gets accepted into a high school called UA, along with his rival, Katsuki. And there, All Might is also a teacher, and other heroes work there as teachers as well. So it's kind of like a mix of, let's say, high school, slice of life, and American superhero stuff. So as a foundation, it is a pretty good story. Midoriya, he's a very relatable character. And pretty much every shonen trope you can think of, mixed with American comic book tropes, and the high school drama anime tropes, they're all put into one. So it does offer something creatively, I wouldn't say distinct or new, but it takes all these elements and puts them into one place, And pretty much every trope you can think, yeah, all these tropes are just applied in very predictable manners. But it has what it makes up for in predictability to some degree with a very unique cast of characters. So it's not just limited to, say, Midoriya or All Might or Katsuki, but you also get to learn a lot about their classmates. For example, Eng, the guy who can run really fast. There's a character who can shoot lasers out of his navel. There's also Todoroki, who can use fire and ice. So, like, every character, and, thanks to the length that the series has to offer, pretty much allows it to have every character have their moment in the sun and whatnot. And not only do you get to see the points of view of, let's say, these heroes, these characters, but of course you get to learn about the villains, and not just, the rival to All Might, All for One, but of course, you learn about Midoriya's eventual rival, and you learn about his motivations, where he comes from, and why he wants to do what he wants to do, and why his followers, stick with him. So, it really does a good job of, giving you all points of views. And the art is also very pretty excellent. So the story is very well structured, but even though it does, you can easily watch this, you can binge watch each, arc. The main problem I have with the story is it kind of goes through the motions a little longer than it should have. That's just how I felt about it. Up until the last third of the series, I just felt the first 2/3 just entirely went through the motions. But at least, it had a direction. You kind of see how the characters grow. But it's just too much in a way that's been, done before. So that's just kind of one of the major flaws. But at least it has the development, and at least it has the direction. For that much, I do give it credit. But as I said before, the presentation is too much. It just goes through the motions. The action is also pretty exciting. As in it goes through the motions, as in going back to that, it's just like how Midoriya has to learn how to use his powers. And I felt that kind of went on a little too longer than it should have. But anyway, eventually the fightings, they evolve. The fighting does get creative, especially as how Midoriya learns how to use his powers. First, he kind of thinks he has to use All Might, and that's one of his biggest mistakes. But eventually, he kind of learns how to use his physical, limitations, natural physical limitations, to how it applies to that power. And I think that was really cool. And then eventually, evolves with helps evolve with him as a fighter. The action is pretty creative, not in a JoJo kind of way, but I would say, to sort of like Yu Yu Hakusho, it's very tactical. You kind of get an internal sense of the action. You kind of think of okay, how do I do this? How do I apply myself in this situation? And it's not just, the individual action that's also very applicable, but, of how when it comes to teams, or let's say 3 versus 1 or 1 versus 3, they kind of figure out, okay, how do I handle this guy? How do I use my power to complement these guys, and all that other stuff? So yeah, that's a situation that's been done before, but it just doesn't do action for the sake of looking cool. They do want to put some substance into it, which I do like. And of course, the superhero designs, they're very comic book in nature. So kind of, even though the characters will use, when they're going to school, it does have that Japanese side. But when it goes to the superhero side, it's kind of more American influenced. I really do like that balance, and that's just not something you see a lot. But I'd say thanks to the popularity of comic book movies, especially the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I do like that there's this kind of element to it. And the music is also very uplifting. I really do like the soundtrack. The music really fits. It knows when to, set the mood, when it's serious, when it's comedic, when it's sad, when it's uplifting, and so on. So, that works really well. And also the voice, I never watched, okay, so I gotta make this very clear. I should have probably said this from the original, my last review of Legend of the Galactic Heroes, is that I do not watch dubs whatsoever. I prefer to watch my anime in raw Japanese, and that's how I watch the entirety of My Hero Academia in Japanese. So Yeah, I don't really remember the names of the voice actors at the top of my head. I probably should have done this beforehand. Unlike my last review style where I kind of typed with the script and then just recorded over footage, I'm just doing this off the cuff, so I kind of don't remember names off the top of my head. But I think the Japanese voice cast is, casted very well. The guy who plays Izuku, he kind of gets not just the youthness of his voice down, but like he kind of gets his eagerness, his enthusiasm, and all the qualities that define him are really well put there. And the guy who plays All Might, he has that appropriate sense of charisma. He has that appropriate energy. And like whenever he's in his weakened form, like he kind of knows how to make the voice sound a little more frailer than usual. So, just to portray that physicality, those two senses of his physicalities. One when he's super buff, or one when he's, super frail. Like, he could be starving in Africa for all we know. So that voice acting is just, it really knows how to do it. And the guy who plays Katsuki, he's always pissed off at 11, dialed up to 11 the most part. So it's like, he's always in a bad mood. So he always has that cracking in his voice and that low, scowl. So I really like that performance. So, the Japanese voice cast, they get the job done. And that's all I got to say about that. So if you're someone who's really getting into anime, you're new to it, then I really do strong, My Hero Academia because it has that balances, of the Japanese manga side and the American comic side. So if you're coming into it as a fan of, American superheroes, then I say this is a really good, anime to start with. And for those of you who are more familiar with anime, if you're sick and tired of typical shonen stuff, then this is not for you. But if you're someone who's, just open to anything, then, I strongly recommend My Hero Academia. And as I'm reviewing this, the spin-off, the season 2 of Vigilantes, is presently airing. And when that gets around to being done with its whole, I'll get around to reviewing that as well. Okay, so that's it for my review, and see you next review.